You ever sit in a room so quiet, even the sound of a fork feels like thunder? That's what it felt like the night everything changed. I was halfway through slicing into a piece of lemon-roasted chicken when Lisa, my wife of 7 years, laughed out loud and said, "Let's be honest, Brandon. You're just a convenient option. I'd never leave you, because you'd never leave me." The whole room froze. Her words dropped like a lit match on a table soaked in gasoline. Her parents, Margot and Charles, stiffened instantly. Her younger sister Natalie blinked mid-sip, her wine glass hovering like she'd just spotted an incoming train and had no idea whether to duck or wave. But Lisa? She just smirked. The worst part? She said it like it was a joke. Like humiliating me in front of the very people who once toasted our marriage was just playful banter over mashed potatoes. I set my fork down. Slowly, carefully. The clink against the porcelain might as well have been a gavel dropping in court. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream or flip the table. I just met her eyes, those calculated, crystal blue eyes that always seemed a little too rehearsed, and said, "You know what? You're right." You could hear a pin drop. I've let this go on too long. The passive-aggressive digs, the eye rolls when I speak, the way you've rewritten me into some kind of placeholder in your life story. I've smiled through all of it. But tonight, that ends. Her mouth twitched. Just barely. I stood up. My napkin drifted to the floor. I didn't care. You say I'd never leave? You're wrong. You just never believed I'd grow a spine. Then I turned and walked out. No keys. No bag. Just the clothes I wore. The phone in my pocket, and the echo of stunned silence trailing behind me like smoke. Outside, the air hit me like a reset button, cool and sharp, biting through my dress shirt like it had waited its whole life for me to finally step out of that house and breathe for real. Want to know what hurts the most? It wasn't what she said. It was how natural it felt for her to say it. Like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. Like I was a character in her dinner performance. And for a long time, I let her write the script. I was the steady guy, the dependable one. I handled the bills, fixed the leaky sink, made her coffee just the way she liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. I worked 9 to 5 at an office job I didn't love, but it paid the mortgage and kept our weekends open for brunch and redecorating. And I told myself, this is marriage. You weather storms. You stick it out. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a husband and became an accessory. Something useful, predictable, safe, convenient. That's the word she chose. Convenient. It wasn't the insult that stung. It was the certainty behind it, the belief that I would absorb it, laugh along, play my part. But I didn't. I walked out into the night, and I knew, right then, that I'd never walk back in the same man again. The next morning, the kitchen looked exactly like it always did, sunlight pooling across the polished marble island, the faint hiss of the espresso machine, and the smell of toasted bread filling the air. Lisa stood by the sink, humming, as if the night before hadn't happened. As if she hadn't just torched whatever was left of our dignity in front of her own family. She turned to me with that too easy smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Coffee," she chirped, already pouring a mug like we were in the middle of some breezy Saturday ritual. I stared at her, not in anger. There was no heat left in me, just distance, like I was observing someone I used to know but couldn't quite place anymore. "No, thanks," I said quietly, stepping around her. She blinked once, maybe twice, but didn't falter. Just kept going like she hadn't noticed anything was off. She set the mug down anyway, next to my seat, as if muscle memory had overridden reality. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, the spoon in her yogurt clinking rhythmically against the glass. "So," she said brightly, "I was thinking we should repaint the upstairs hallway. Maybe that sage green you liked at the hardware store last month?" The words sounded like static. Her voice was cheery, unbothered. A performance so polished it bordered on absurd. I didn't answer, just watched the steam rise from the untouched coffee mug in front of me. I wasn't angry. I was removed, like my body had returned, but the rest of me was still standing outside in the cold night, replaying every second of what she said. Convenient. That word was still echoing, not like a wound, but like a diagnosis. She tried again, tapping her nails on the table. "You working from home today, or heading in?" "I've got things to do," I replied. I didn't tell her what or where, and that was new. I'd always kept her in the loop, sent texts, updated plans. Not because she asked, but because that's who I was. Reliable, predictable, the guy who checked in. Now, I couldn't even picture her in the rest of my day. I looked up. She was watching me, subtly, but carefully. Her smile had dipped just slightly, enough for someone like me, someone who knew her well, to see the edges of confusion creeping in. I think, for the first time, she noticed the air between us had shifted. It wasn't tension. It wasn't even frost. It was detachment. She was playing house while I was already halfway out the front door in my mind. She reached for the butter knife, casually. "By the way, Mom texted this morning," she said. "She wanted to know if we're still coming to their anniversary brunch next weekend." I stood up. No warning. Just rose, grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, and started toward the door. "Brandon," she said, still in that breezy tone. "Did you hear me?" I paused, hand on the doorknob. "I heard you," I said without turning. A beat of silence. And then I walked out, not slamming the door, not making a scene, just closing it softly behind me, like you would at the end of a meeting that ran too long. Outside, the morning sun felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Inside, I imagined her still sitting there, spoon paused midair, smile faltering in an empty kitchen that no longer echoed the way it used to. She didn't realize it yet, but something real had broken. And unlike drywall or silence after an argument, this wasn't something a coat of sage green could ever fix. It arrived in a plain white envelope. No fanfare, no return address, just my name in soft cursive ink. I found it tucked among bills and grocery flyers, wedged halfway into the mailbox like it didn't want to be noticed. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. I knew the handwriting instantly. Margot. Lisa's mother was always precise. Her penmanship had the grace of someone who spent years writing thank you notes by hand. I stood there on the front porch, keys still in hand, the late afternoon sun warm on my neck, and just read. "Brandon, we've both been struggling to find the right words since that night. Maybe there aren't any. But silence, we realized, is its own kind of betrayal. What Lisa said, how she said it, was cruel. Not just disrespectful, but humiliating. We were horrified and ashamed, not just for what she said, but for everything we may have missed over the years. I don't know how you stayed so calm. I don't know how many times you must have swallowed your pride for the sake of peace. We saw you. We see you now. Please know that you didn't imagine the weight. You weren't crazy. We're sorry. Margot and Charles." I read it twice, then a third time, and suddenly the porch light, the sound of a distant lawnmower, the smell of pine mulch from the neighbor's yard, everything blurred around the edges. It wasn't validation I needed. It was confirmation I wasn't invisible. I tucked the letter into my jacket pocket and walked inside. The living room greeted me like always, tastefully designed, color-coordinated, perfectly curated by Lisa's Pinterest boards. But now it felt different, like a stage after the actors have left. She wasn't home yet, just silence, and not the sharp, cold kind from our recent mornings. This silence felt conflicted, like it was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd crumble or rise. I sat down on the edge of the couch, the same spot I always chose. From there, I could see the fireplace she insisted on lighting even in early fall, the coffee table decorated with overpriced design books no one ever read, and her favorite vase, tall, blue, delicate, still holding the wilted tulips from last weekend. My phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "Running late. Want tie tonight?" That was it. Not sorry about last night. Not can we talk. Just a casual text like nothing had shifted beneath our feet. I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy to pretend. Instead, I pulled the letter back out, unfolded it carefully, and laid it flat on the coffee table. It sat there silently, quietly more meaningful than anything Lisa had said to me in months. There was no dramatic music, no thunder outside, just the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the floor as I stood up and walked away. That letter didn't change everything, but it changed something. Lisa had spent years crafting the narrative, that I was lucky, that she was the prize, that I should be grateful just to be in the picture. But that night at the dinner table, when she laughed at me like I was furniture, her parents saw it, and now they were starting to see me, too. I didn't expect to see her. Honestly, I wasn't even supposed to be there. The fridge was mostly empty, and I was too restless to sit at home listening to the buzz of Lisa's TV shows in the next room. So I slipped on my jacket and headed to the grocery store 2 blocks down, the quiet one with 2 bright lights and always sleepy cashiers. I was standing in the produce aisle, inspecting a bunch of green grapes like I suddenly had standards, when I heard her voice. "Brandon." I turned, and there she was. Natalie, Lisa's younger sister. The quiet one at family dinners. The one always half smiling like she knew something but didn't want to be the one to say it. She wore a gray hoodie, hair pulled into a lazy bun, reusable shopping bag tucked under one arm. No makeup, no polish, just real. Her eyes studied me, not with pity, but something closer to recognition. She gave a small smile, tilting her head like she wasn't sure if it was okay to approach. "I didn't think I'd run into you here," she said. "Same," I replied, just grabbing a few things. She hesitated, then took a step closer, her voice dropping. "Listen, about the other night." I waited. Natalie looked down for a second, adjusting her grip on the shopping bag. "That was brutal," she said quietly. "What Lisa said. I don't think I've ever seen Mom look that stunned." I nodded once. "I've heard worse," I lied. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You haven't. Not like that. Not in front of all of us." We stood there in a soft bubble of quiet, the scent of oranges and fresh herbs floating around us, shoppers passing like ghosts. "I always wondered," Natalie said suddenly, "how you put up with her, with the way she talks to you. That surprised me." She met my eyes again. "I know we've never been close," she added, "but I saw things. Over the years. Little things. You'd say something thoughtful, and she'd wave it off. You'd do something kind, and she'd find a way to roll her eyes. Her voice didn't have anger in it, just sadness. You never said anything," I said, not accusing, just curious. Natalie bit her lip. "I didn't think it was my place. But that night, when you stood up and just left, I felt like someone finally cracked the glass. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken like that about my relationship with Lisa. Not openly, not to my face." "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I said. "I'm not," she replied. "I mean, not for you. I'm sorry it had to happen like that, but I think it needed to." We stood there for a moment longer before she asked, almost shyly, "Do you have time for a quick coffee?" I hesitated. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't inappropriate. It was just unexpected. But something in her tone, gentle, open, made it feel less like an invitation and more like a peace offering. There was a cafe next door, the kind with wood-paneled walls and chairs that didn't match. We sat by the window. Natalie ordered a chai latte. I got a black coffee I didn't really want, just for something to hold. She talked first, about growing up in Lisa's shadow, about how people always assumed she was the one with the attitude, just because she didn't speak much, about how Lisa could twist a compliment into an insult so smoothly. Even their mom didn't catch it until hours later. "I'm not defending her," she said, "but she's always been like that. With everyone. You just lasted longer than most." I listened, really listened, and for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself, or defend my choices, or pretend I was okay. I just existed, with someone who saw me. When we finished, we walked out together. She gave a small wave before heading off to her car, the late afternoon sun catching in her eyes. Neither of us said we'd do this again, but we both lingered a second longer than we needed to. And in that silence, something shifted. Not loudly, not suddenly, but deeply. It started subtly. A glance that lingered half a second too long. A question that sounded casual, but landed too hard. Lisa never said anything outright. She was too good at staying polished, but I could feel her watching. Every time I left the house without telling her where I was going. Every time I came back with that quiet calm she couldn't decode anymore. Her smile grew just a little tighter. It wasn't suspicion. It was calculation. She wasn't trying to rebuild anything between us. She was measuring the distance, watching what direction I drifted in. And lately, that direction had a name. Natalie. We hadn't made any plans. Nothing dramatic. Just a few more chance encounters. Another coffee after I bumped into her at the dry cleaners. A long conversation on the sidewalk when we both showed up early to her father's birthday lunch. It wasn't flirtation. It was peaceful. She listened when I spoke. She asked about my work without making it sound like small talk. When I joked about burning a pot roast, she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she cared enough to find humor in the mess. And Lisa noticed. One night, I came home and found her in the kitchen, reorganizing the spice rack. She didn't look up when I walked in. "How's Natalie?" she asked. I paused mid-step. "She's fine. She seems to have a lot of free time these days." It was meant to sound light. It didn't. "She works part-time," I said simply. "Schedules are flexible." Lisa turned around, eyes sharp behind her carefully styled hair. "You two catching up a lot lately?" It wasn't a question. I met her gaze, steady. "She's been kind." A flicker, just there, in the way her hand tightened around the paprika bottle. "Well," she said, a little too sweetly. She always did have a thing for rescuing broken things. I didn't respond. She wanted a reaction, a crack, something she could use. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. The next day, I found her sitting on the couch when I got back from a short walk. Makeup done, hair curled, like she was preparing for a photo shoot she hadn't told anyone about. "I was thinking," she said, flipping a magazine page without looking at me. "Maybe we should go to that wine bar downtown. The one you used to like." I sat down across from her, slowly. "We don't talk anymore, Brandon," she continued. "I don't even know what you do with your days." That was rich, considering she never asked before. "I've been around," I said. "Same place, same routines. But something's changed." That time, I didn't answer. She looked up, studying me like a riddle she hadn't solved. "Are you trying to punish me?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I'm just done pretending." She looked down at her hands, twisting the ring she used to flaunt at every family function. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But that passed. Because even now, even in her most vulnerable quiet, Lisa wasn't mourning me. She was mourning control. Later that week, I ran into Natalie again. This time at the park, where she was sitting on a bench sketching something in a notebook. I sat beside her. She didn't flinch. "I think Lisa knows we've been talking," I said. She gave a soft laugh. "She always knows." We sat there for a while, watching the leaves rustle overhead. I didn't need to fill the space with noise. Neither did she. There was no plan, no future being mapped out. But the silence we shared felt truer than all the forced conversations Lisa and I had stacked up over the years. Back at the house, I found Lisa in the dining room, adjusting place settings that didn't need adjusting. She glanced at me, lips pressed in a tight line. "Out with Natalie again?" I didn't answer. Her jaw clenched, but she smiled. "How lovely." And just like that, the air between us turned thick with unspoken tension. She wouldn't say it. Not yet. But she felt it. The shift. The quiet unraveling of the grip she thought she'd never lose. I wasn't expecting anything. Not from Lisa, not really. And certainly not from Natalie. I told myself birthdays were just numbers anyway. Easier to treat the day like any other. No expectations meant no disappointments. But sometimes, it's the things you don't ask for that say the most. Dinner was quiet. Lisa had insisted on making her signature chicken marsala, which I appreciated for the effort more than the taste. Her parents came over. Natalie arrived last, slipping through the front door with a soft knock and a nervous smile. I caught her eyes as she walked in. Calm, steady, unreadable. She carried a slim package wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, tucked under one arm like it was too personal to hand off just yet. Lisa greeted her with her usual too bright tone. "You made it." "Barely." Natalie just smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." We sat down to eat. The wine was good. Too good, probably, for this kind of night. The food was fine. The conversation skimmed the surface like a skipping stone. Then came the gifts. Lisa cleared her throat, reached for a glossy envelope she'd placed on the table. "Happy birthday," she said, sliding it across to me like a hotel checkout slip. Inside was a gift card. Generic. No note. No name on the front. Just a logo for a department store I hadn't been to in years. "Thanks," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Lisa leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine like she'd just solved world hunger. Her parents exchanged a look, but said nothing. Then Natalie stood. I hope this is okay," she said, walking around the table to hand me the package. I took it carefully, unwrapped it slowly. It was a leather journal. Thick, dark brown, with my initials subtly embossed in the corner. The stitching was hand-done. Inside, the pages were lined but unmarked, and at the very back was a tiny note. You've been carrying too much in silence. Thought maybe this could help. I didn't say anything for a second. Just let my thumb trace the edge of the cover. It's perfect, I said quietly. Lisa's fork scraped against her plate. Oh, you're journaling now? She asked, forcing a chuckle. That's new. I didn't respond. Her parents both looked at me, then at Natalie, then at the untouched wine in their glasses. No one said anything more, but the room said everything. Lisa sat there biting her lip, pretending to be amused, but her eyes weren't laughing. Not even close. She picked at her food. Natalie kept her gaze on her napkin. I rested my hand on the journal beside my plate and thought, this is what consideration looks like. This is what it feels like to be seen. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the guests had gone, I walked past the coffee table and saw the gift card still lying there, untouched. Lisa came up behind me, arms crossed. You really like that notebook, huh? She said. I nodded. She put thought into it. I replied, not bothering to look at her. Lisa didn't answer. She just turned away and walked upstairs without another word. And in that silence, I heard it clear as day. She'd felt the shift too. Not because I'd thrown it in her face, but because for once, someone else had handed me something that fit. And she hadn't. The dining room was still warm from dinner. The lights dimmed just enough to soften the edges of everything. Lisa had excused herself early, said she was tired, but I knew better. Her smiles had been paper-thin all evening. Natalie was gone too, a quiet goodbye and a hand briefly resting on my shoulder before she left. That left just me, Margot, and Charles sitting in the kind of silence that feels borrowed, too delicate to break, but too honest to ignore. Margot reached for her teacup. That was a lovely meal, she said. Lisa always did have a touch for plating, Charles added, trying too hard to fill the space. I nodded. She's good at presentation, I said simply, and the words hung in the air longer than they should have. Margot set her cup down gently. Her eyes met mine, not cold, not even curious, just observant. You seem lighter, she said, since you started choosing your piece. I smiled faintly. Feels strange, doesn't it? Charles leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his stomach like he was bracing for a confession. Strange, maybe, but not wrong. Another pause. Then Margot glanced toward the hallway, toward the stairs Lisa had disappeared up an hour ago. If things ever shift, she said carefully, just know. Natalie's always had a good heart. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was shocked, but because of how gently she said it. No push, no agenda, just an offering, wrapped in the kind of parental concern that doesn't pretend to have all the answers. She does, I said finally. Have a good heart. The three of us sat there for a moment, letting that truth settle. Charles coughed lightly and stood, muttering something about checking the car lights. Margot touched my hand briefly before following him. Just be kind to yourself, Brandon, she whispered. The front door clicked softly behind them. I stood alone in the hallway, watching the last of their taillights fade into the night. Upstairs, I could hear the faint creak of Lisa's door closing. Not slamming, just shutting out the rest of us, like she always had. And downstairs, in the quiet echo of a room no longer pretending, her parents had said what Lisa never would. Maybe love doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives in implication, in the spaces between carefully chosen words. And tonight, for the first time, I didn't feel out of place in my own story. I was in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug when I heard the voice. Not a yell at first, just sharp enough to stop my hands mid-rinse. You've got to be kidding me. It came from the hallway. Lisa. I walked out, towel in hand, just as she came down the stairs fast, barefoot, hair loose, wearing the same sweater from dinner like it was armor she'd forgotten to take off. Her parents had just closed the front door a moment ago, but she must have heard them. All of it. She stood at the foot of the stairs, eyes wild. Did I hear that right? She snapped. Did my mother really just try to set you up with my sister? The room tilted instantly. You were eavesdropping? I asked, my voice low. She laughed, short, sharp. Oh, please. That wasn't a conversation. That was a handoff. A trade-in. They might as well have said, hey, Brandon, since Lisa's a disaster, why not try the family discount? Lisa, no, she said, stepping forward, finger pointed, heat in her cheeks. You don't get to play innocent. You've been parading around with Natalie like some wounded poet while I'm upstairs trying to salvage what's left of our marriage. I blinked. Salvage? Yes, she shouted. What do you think this is? You think just because I said one wrong thing at dinner that gives you a pass to rewrite the whole relationship? One wrong thing, I said, voice rising before I could stop it. Lisa, you humiliated me. In front of everyone. You call me a convenience. A man you could keep because he wouldn't leave. And now you're mad that I finally walked out the door? Her mouth opened, but no words came. Natalie walked in through the side entrance right then, holding a box she'd left behind. She froze when she saw us. Lisa turned on her instantly. Oh, perfect, she snapped. Of course. Here she is. Right on cue. Natalie blinked. I just came to grab. Spare me, Lisa said. You've been waiting for this. Don't think I don't see the looks, the little coffee dates. You two have been circling each other like vultures over a fresh kill. That's enough, I said, stepping forward. No, it's not, Lisa barked. Because this is my family. My marriage. And now my own sister's trying to slide in like some sweet, quiet consolation prize. Natalie's eyes welled up. That's not fair, isn't it? Lisa spat. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you're not standing there hoping he'll look at you the way he used to look at me. Natalie's voice cracked. Maybe I am. Because you stopped earning it a long time ago. Silence. The air felt like glass. Thin, tight, ready to shatter. Lisa stepped back, eyes burning. She turned and swept her arm across the dining table, sending a stack of plates crashing to the floor. Shards flew everywhere, and the sound echoed like a gunshot through the house. Get out, she said to both of us, her voice breaking now. Just get out. You want each other? Fine. Take your little notebooks and lattes and be happy. I'm done playing the villain in a story you both rewrote behind my back. Natalie stood frozen. I reached for her arm gently. Come on, I said quietly. We walked out together, past the shattered porcelain, past the sharp silence. Lisa didn't follow. The door clicked behind us. Outside, the sky had started to spit light rain. Natalie wrapped her arms around herself. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. I just kept walking beside her, each step echoing the truth we could no longer take back. Inside, the wreckage was hers. But out here, the storm had just begun to shift. The office smelled like leather and paperwork. Nothing dramatic. No storm clouds. No slammed doors. Just a sleek glass table, a calm voice across from me, and a pen in my hand. I want it clean, I said. The attorney nodded slowly. And final. Yes. No drawn-out games. Just, done. She made a note. Her tone never changed. Professional, efficient. But every question felt like a stitch being pulled from fabric I'd worn too long. I left with a folder of forms and instructions. I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Just clarity. Back home, Lisa was in the kitchen again. She'd baked something. Peach cobbler. Her default when she wanted to seem soft. The whole house smelled like a childhood memory, and for a second, I almost forgot. Until she turned, smile too practiced. Thought you might like dessert, she said, sliding the plate toward me on the counter. No thanks, I said, setting down my keys. I've already eaten. She blinked once, then again. Her smile wavered. Since when do you skip my cobbler? I don't skip dessert, I replied. I skip performance. The crack showed then, just a sliver. But enough. Later that night, she knocked on my door. I'd taken to sleeping in the guest room. She lingered in the hallway, her voice softer than I'd heard in weeks. Brandon, can we talk? I didn't answer. She tried again the next morning, dressed nicer, breakfast already made. Her tone bright, her words breezy. Then, by evening, the shift came. I see what you're doing, she snapped from across the living room. You think staying quiet gives you power. That's cute. I didn't look up from the paper. You think Natalie would actually stay with you? She pressed, louder now. You think she wants to be your rebound? Still nothing from me. And that, more than anything, lit the fuse. She exploded, shouted, accused, threw out every name she could dig up, every insult buried in years of sharp observation. It was like watching someone try to break a mirror that had already fallen. But I stayed steady. I had made my decision. In the middle of her tirade, I calmly stood, picked up the folder from the side table, and walked it to my desk. I set it down, opened it, and began reviewing the final checklist. Behind me, she went quiet. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. We can start fresh. No more games. I turned to face her. You said I'd never leave, I said. That was the one thing you believed for sure. She said nothing. And so I walked past her, each step deliberate, each breath easier than the last. Because this time, I wasn't bluffing. It was supposed to be a calm dinner. Lisa's idea, of course, an olive branch, she called it. Everyone invited. Her parents, Natalie, even me. The table was set like something out of a catalog. Candles flickering, folded napkins shaped like swans. Lisa wore soft colors. Her hair curled just enough to look accidental. But everything about her felt rehearsed. I hadn't planned to speak much. I was there for closure, for civility. The divorce papers sat in my briefcase, already signed. We made it through appetizers in relative peace. Her father asked about work. Her mother commented on the weather. Natalie was quiet. Until Lisa leaned back in her chair, wine glass spinning slowly in her fingers, and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Some people just can't stand to be alone. Huh, Natalie? Silence. Natalie froze. Lisa smiled, syrup sweet. I mean, it's almost funny how fast you latched onto him. Guess little sisters always wanted what their big sisters had. Charles shifted in his seat. Margot blinked hard. Lisa, Natalie started. Oh, don't pretend this wasn't your plan from the beginning, Lisa said, her voice rising. I've seen the way you look at him. The way you show up at the store he shops at, the cafe he likes. You're not subtle. Natalie stood up, chair scraping hard against the tile. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. You want to talk about subtle, Lisa? You want to talk about loyalty? Lisa blinked. Then maybe we should talk about how you slept with his friend before the wedding. The air collapsed. Dead silence. Margot's hand flew to her chest. Charles dropped his fork. Lisa's mouth fell open. You think you own him? Natalie went on. You cheated on him with one of his groomsmen. You smiled through engagement photos while texting another man. And now you're furious that he's finally done giving you second chances you never earned. Lisa looked around the table, eyes wild, jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. Not once. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the folder, and set it gently in front of her. Good luck, I said. Her face twisted, but no sound came out. I stood, nodded once to her parents, then turned toward Natalie. She was already reaching for her coat, blinking back heat in her eyes. We walked out together, past the flickering candles, past the shattered illusion. Behind us, a life ended without a single slammed door. Only truth. And silence. The park was quiet that morning. Not silent, just easy. Birdsong here and there. A soft breeze shifting the branches overhead. The kind of day that doesn't demand anything from you. Natalie walked beside me, our hands lightly intertwined. Not in a showy way. Just, sure, present. Her thumb traced small circles against mine as we strolled down the winding path past the pond. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. Some peace doesn't arrive with trumpets. It just settles in slowly, like breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. I glanced at her. She wore a denim jacket over a faded t-shirt. No makeup, hair tied back in a simple knot. Still the most grounding presence I'd felt in years. She caught me looking and smiled, soft and knowing. Ahead, a bench waited in the shade. We sat, watched ducks drift across the water like they had nowhere better to be. I could have stayed in that moment for hours. Across the street, tucked discreetly behind the privacy tint of a parked silver SUV, I saw her. Lisa, sitting alone in the driver's seat. Window cracked, elbow propped, her eyes fixed on us. She didn't wave, didn't drive off, just watched. There was no rage left in her, no dramatic exit, just stillness. The look of someone finally realizing the show had ended, and no one was staying for an encore. For a second, I didn't feel anger, just a strange kind of calm, maybe even pity, because for all the years she spent trying to choreograph my life, the one thing she never expected was that I'd learned to dance without her. Next to me, Natalie exhaled. You okay? She asked. I nodded. For the first time in a long time. Yeah. We stood up, kept walking. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They end with footsteps, moving forward, steady and free. And sometimes, healing isn't loud. It's a hand in yours, the road ahead, and the quiet promise that the past won't follow where you're going.